Anthony Grassi here for NAIA.ticker. Happy to sit down for a small college conversation with the president and CEO of the NAIA, Jim Carr. Jim, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Anthony. Looking forward to the conversation.
So we sit here today. You guys have just launched your new branding campaign, The Right Way to Play. Why was now the right time for this message to be pushed, and why was this the right message to be sent?
Yeah, so the ideas first started coming together probably about 18 months ago. We've always tried to promote the NAIA brand and to push things out there, but from a resource perspective, that can be challenging to run a national campaign. But about 18 months ago, all of our primary leadership groups, as we were talking about a new strategic plan, that being our presidents, our athletics directors, and our commissioners, were saying emphatically, we want to get out and tell the story of the NAIA. We want to get out and spread the message, but we need more resources and direction from the national office. So we came together and started to incorporate that into our strategic plan, and then about 6 months ago launched the internal effort to get things going. And we ended up landing on the right way to play through lots and lots of discussions, but it just resonated with people, and it said, in essence, the NAIA level of competition, the way our schools operate, really is the way college athletics was meant to be. And so let's celebrate that. We were talking about before we came on air that there's a lot of chaos in our industry, lots of turbulence in higher ed, but we want to be grounded in education-based athletics, and we think the right way to play signifies that.
Yeah, and the timing as we sit here right now, pretty busy week. Obviously, you guys just wrapped up your convention on the NAIA side. Across the collegiate athletics landscape, the House settlement, or the first House settlement hearing, was on Monday. What do you think the right way to play campaign, the message that it sends, is across the broader intercollegiate athletics landscape is?
Yeah, well, the timing was definitely interesting. It was also the day before was National Student Athlete Day, so all those things kind of coming together was, I don't know, maybe just ironic, but certainly interesting to think about. I think what we're mainly trying to say is, the NAIA being the right way to play signifies that our schools have the proper perspective around college athletics. We still want and are committed to our students coming to get an education primarily, and for the most part, but continuing to do something they love and that they're passionate about, and getting some scholarship money or some financial support in order to do that. I think some people have said it implies that maybe things aren't the right way to play in other spaces and other areas, but we're certainly not trying to point fingers at anybody. But we are saying, if you don't know much about us, come learn a little more about the NAIA, and I think you'll like what you find.
What do you think the long, or maybe short and long-term implications of this messaging are? Obviously, the first thing that came to mind to me is, this press release sent out this morning was you guys just added 2 new members. You've added 27 since the beginning of the decade. Where do you think this branding campaign kind of makes the most impact?
Yeah, I don't, it's not really accidental that we're doing it now. I think the timing is good for a lot of reasons. And one of the main ones that you mentioned is there are a lot of schools right now at all different levels of college athletics that are trying to decide, are we in the right place? Do we, the division we're in or the organization we're in, do they share the mission of our institution, or kind of the mission of our institution thrive in that particular scenario? So we do believe there's going to be a lot of change in the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. And so again, we want to tell people that here's the NAIA, here's what we believe is the right way to play, here's the right way to compete, here's an association that understands the business of small college athletics, and we want to help your school thrive in these turbulent times.
Let's talk a little bit about the process through this whole thing. You mentioned that kind of at the top. Who was involved in as this process went out? You mentioned some of the timing to begin with, but who were maybe some of the constituents involved in this process?
Yeah, so it was our primary leadership groups along with the national office staff, and it really came together as part of our strategic planning process. We were scheduled to launch a new strategic plan in July of 2024, so last year in July, and so we started that planning process about 9 months prior to that. So a lot of conversations, long period of time. And as I mentioned, our primary leadership groups were pretty emphatic in saying, now's the time to be much more bold in telling the story. You asked about process. We also went to our council of presidents and said, we have some dollars, which for us are significant in some reserve funds. And so we asked them to approve some of those dollars coming out of reserve and going into helping to launch this campaign over the next 3 years. So just lots of good synergies came came into play, and what we're seeing in the early stages. We just launched over the weekend, but our members are very excited about it.
What are the goals for this campaign? Do you have like objectives, KPIs? What are the goals set out for this campaign?
Yeah, we do. And I apologize, I don't have those in front of me, but it's certainly all around our members serving as advocates. So through both social media, but also some other ways we're asking our members to share through their different platforms. We're tracking all those things and monitoring all those, and certainly have some KPIs around growing our reach and our engagement through social media. And so far we're far surpassing all of those, but a long way to go with it.
How would you measure success for this campaign? Obviously, there's probably some social metrics, some impressions, some like Q score, awareness rating that you can tag to this. But what does success look like for you?
Yeah, and these are probably a little more qualitative than quantitative. The ones that I'm going to talk about, although we have a lot of quantitative ones, and that is that I would start with our own members, and that our own members are coming towards us and getting engaged and getting involved. And there's certainly some ways to measure that. We will be doing that. And then secondly, it's one thing if we all get excited within the NAIA, but I want to make sure that people outside of the NAIA are better understanding our messaging and who we are. And so we're really tracking a lot of engagement in social media. So not just impressions, not just those that are put out there, but what are people doing when they see it? Are they getting engaged with it? Are they reaching out to either our member institutions or to us based on what they saw? And again, early indications are that they are.
We mentioned you guys wrapped up the NAIA convention from this past weekend in San Diego. What was the response from the membership that was in San Diego when they kind of saw the rollout?
They were very excited, and probably the most important group. We had about 15 student athletes who are on our National Association of Student Athletes. And they were just ecstatic to see, I think, the pride that the NAIA has in what we're doing, the confidence that we have that now's the right time to go out with something major like this. And so I haven't really mentioned the student athletes, but that's another important metric and set of metrics that we're going to be taking a look at. And we're changing some of the things we do with our eligibility center to make it a little more of a welcome center and celebrate when students become eligible, and hopefully build some affinity with those students as they enter into the NAIA and really educate them on what all the possibilities are, the opportunities, and the history of the NAIA as well. And so that was really exciting to see at the convention. And then as you extend over to our ADs and presidents, just again, great excitement. Amy Novak, who's the chair of our council of presidents right now, said that this is the most engaged and the most optimistic, excited that she's ever seen the COP, and she's been a part of that for almost a decade now. So it was really great to hear her say that.
Yeah, and one of the notable things that she had said in the release was that this campaign was built to be shaped and shared by our members. What does that look like in practice? Yeah,
I would think I wasn't right there when she said that, but I would think she's talking about how this is intended to be an extension of our membership. We're really focusing in on them becoming advocates. It's a way to spread the word with the resources that we have. And so, I certainly shared by the membership is probably a little bit easier to grasp, but shaped by them as well, because we serve the members. And while our job is to align people and get us all rowing in the same direction, so to speak, we want to be attentive to, to how they're wanting to talk about the NAIA, what's important to them. It's more important for them to talk about how they get value out of the NAIA than it is for somebody like me who's a hired gun when I go out to speak to others. So I think that's probably a little bit of what she was talking about.
Are there expectations on the membership through this campaign, whether that's maybe, I don't know if quota is the right way to put it, but obviously I've scrolled through Twitter today, I've seen a ton of posts about the right way to play. We've seen some videos created from student athletes and coaches. What is the expectation of the membership through this?
Yeah, I think it's really primarily two things. One is I think they're always looking for ways to explain to student athletes that they're recruiting to their campuses about the NAIA, so that this gives a nice new platform and corresponding or related resources in order to do that. So I know that's very exciting to them to have those things. Their coaches will now have more tools and resources. And then secondly, our members believe that there are some schools out there who are not yet in the NAIA, and certainly by all means not every Division II school or every Division III school is the right fit for the NAIA, but I think there are certain ones, especially in the strong places of our footprint, that our members believe should at least consider joining the NAIA. So they're excited to now have, again, more tools and resources to go out and get those conversations started. The way we typically get conversations started with somebody who's not in the NAIA is a joint effort with a conference, but it's also typically led by somebody in the membership, just because that's, they have their ears and eyes open out in their geographic footprint. They can start those conversations, and then we come alongside of them and just talk about what joining the NAIA might look like. But I know there's an expectation that through this campaign, more of those conversations will get started.
Do you foresee this campaign maybe shifting that dynamic of how new members are cultivated into the NAIA?
Yeah, I don't know if it changes completely, because we've been doing some things on our own before the campaign, just in terms of, we do advertising with the NAIA.ticker, for example, but also, Division 2 and Division 3 tickers as well, and doing some things with the Chronicle of Higher Education and other higher ed publications, just to make sure that people are more aware of us. And so that's gained some traction, but this certainly should elevate that and increase the exposure and just give us some new ways to come towards folks. And we're already seeing, we've had a couple of schools reach out to us in the last couple of days. You don't always know exactly where the idea came about or why they are reaching out at this moment, but I don't think it's a coincidence that they have with the timing of this.
And how much of, given the impact that the president's had, you mentioned the reception from the Council of Presidents at the convention earlier. Higher education has been a very interesting position, we can put it that way. And the messaging from this campaign, through everything that I've seen from you guys and read so far, seems to try to basically hit that right on the nose of, there may be some things going on in different levels of college athletics that may be different to you, maybe not what you think of as the way to play. How did the broader higher education landscape maybe play into this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think it's, we have an initiative called Return on Athletics, which is, as the name would imply, is really kind of a business tool for presidents and their boards or cabinets to understand the business of college athletics. Whereas I think the right way to play is a little broader than that. It's not just the business part of it, but I think of it as an extension of some of the other things that we're doing that that hopefully opens the eyes and ears of people out there who want to at least consider what the NAIA has to offer. If you're in Division 3, should we consider the opportunity to use athletic aid in order to help drive enrollment or to help improve the bottom line? In Division 2, there's a lot of data that shows that you can compete at a similar level in the NAIA as you do in Division 2 for about half the cost. So is it worth, in this day and age, taking a look at the NAIA and what that might be if we join? So I do think it's an extension of all those kinds of things we've done, but a little bit, I guess, just a little more interesting spin on that. It was something that we think resonates with a lot of people, even if you're not thinking exactly about the business of small college athletics.
Yeah, and what does the feedback loop look like from this? You mentioned the internal feedback from presidents and ADs and student athletes. We mentioned how they're helping to share and shape the campaign itself. And then obviously the external impact that it has with potential new members. What does the feedback loop look like, and how does maybe that inform how the national office can not pivot the campaign, but direct the campaign in ways where you can see effectiveness? Yeah,
so I mean, it's a great question, and we have we invested in some new tools to help us just, if nothing else, or at the initial point, understand the reach better and the engagement through social media. But we also are being very active in conjunction with our members to start up conversations or follow up on conversations that we've had with others in the different, geographic footprints that we have out there. So a lot of both qualitative and quantitative feedback that we're getting. I will say, still some work to be done in terms of how we gather all that, process all that, and then use it in the most effective ways. But that's certainly part of the process.
You mentioned the strategic plan for the NAIA earlier. How does this new branding campaign fit into the long-term vision for the association?
Yeah, it's the first time we've had it as a standalone pillar within our plan. We call the strategic priorities, we call them pillars, as part of our plan. But it really now is incorporated very well. I mean, our first and primary pillars in the last decade anyway has been, how do we strengthen the NAIA membership? That means retaining all of our members and then finding those we think are a good fit. And then the second part of it is making sure that we're bringing value to our current members, and then therefore prospects, we can show the value that they could get if they were in the NAIA. And then what we've been missing, or what we needed to strengthen, was how do we tell the story better, and how do we make sure that people know of the value and know of all the good things happening in the NAIA. So that's really how it fits into the current strategic plan, which is we're in the first year of a 3-year plan. But my guess would be, or I'm pretty confident that it will extend way past this 3-year period. And I guess I would just mention the fourth pillar is probably the most important one, is that's our student athlete experience and how we develop young people. I didn't want to leave them out of the importance of them being in the plan.
Absolutely. And they're the reason that everybody in the NAIA, everybody across small college athletics gets to do what they do. I'm curious, maybe on that note, how does, it may not be as direct as you mentioned, but how does that maybe inform and the broader thought and idea around the right way to play? Obviously, the NAIA has been kind of at the forefront of a lot of what you guys would call common sense legislation, as the industry of college athletics has changed a ton over the last 5-10 years. How does that maybe inform how you make future legislative decisions?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I tend to look through our rules, and I guess I need to point out I don't get to make all the rules. They're voted on by the membership, but I always encourage us to think about new rules or new policies, or just strategically, they're things that we haven't even thought of before. There are really 3 lenses. The first being what we call character-driven intercollegiate athletics. Our Champions of Character program is essentially our compass and how we want to all come together to form the basis of everything that we do. The second is our student athletes. What's best for them, and that's how we got to removing restrictions on the ways that they could go out and earn money from name, image, and likeness, even before the NCAA did. I think whether you agree with the transgender policy that we ended up putting in place, we tried to look at it mostly through the competition lens and how our student athletes were being impacted by it. So lots of things that we do through the student athlete lens. And then the third, and it goes back to you talking about common sense legislation. We want to try to provide as much autonomy to our schools to operate in ways that serve the missions of their campuses, as opposed to a lot of bureaucracy and rules that they're having to jump through hoops in order to comply with our rules. And so we certainly need rules that apply to everybody, and we have eligibility rules and others that are important. But most of what we do is to try to give them autonomy to carry out the mission of their institution. And to me, that's the way it should be.
Excellent. Well, Jim, I'll kind of give you the last word here to tie the bow on this conversation and kind of give everybody else, whether they were within the NAIA or outside of the NAIA, the idea and the message around the right way to play.
Yeah, well, first, I would just encourage anyone out there that wants to learn more to go to our website or stay connected to our social media campaigns or platforms around this. But the primary message is that we believe in the way that we operate. We're committed to education-based athletics, which I think is a little bit at risk right now in general. We're committed to the student athlete experience and putting them first, and then committed to making sure that our schools have the autonomy to run their athletics programs in the way that is best for their individual institutions. And so those things come together along with other things to make the NAIA the right way to play.
Jim, you mentioned, I'll ask this last question. You mentioned the education-based model. Where do you think, obviously a ton is changing, has changed, will change. Where do you think the future for this education-based model can live and best lives to serve those student athletes?
Yeah, it's a very complex question, lots of different moving parts to it, but I'll do my best to kind of make it, to answer it at a pretty high level. I think for 98%, whatever, a very large percentage of colleges and universities out there that want to operate pretty high level athletics programs, the education-based model is the right model, and really the only model that can work for those institutions. I'm certainly not opposed to student athletes at the highest level getting compensated in ways that it looks like they are, but you get past the first 60, 70, 80 schools at the top of the list, and it's hard, one, for people to support financially that kind of model, but also if rules get passed that take us out of this idea that the athletes are there to get an education, and that's the primary reason. So if you get rid of advancing towards a degree and the restrictions on number of seasons and years that you can be there in order to play those seasons, it's going to turn into a model that's just not going to work for most of those colleges and universities, and that would just be a shame, because I think most people in the industry, or probably all of us in the industry, know that aspect of it is very important, and students get opportunities. Probably a lot of them who otherwise might not go to college or might not get a chance to get a degree and get in because of athletics. And I don't know if I like this saying, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, that model works for almost all schools, and we need to make sure that we champion it. And we're committed to working with, even though we're competitors in some ways with D2 or D3, and they got put NJCA in there as well as being committed to this model. We need to work together to make sure that it exists for generations to come.
Absolutely. Well, Jim, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing about the NAIA's new The Right Way to Play campaign.
Yeah, thanks, Anthony. Really appreciate it.